Welcome to tonight's Stark Financial Group free meeting. We're going to talk about the employee of the corporation. Um, so Let me find it here. All right. So this is the reason why I brought this up. Okay, is this is 26 CFR section 31-3402 voluntary withholding agreements. Okay. An employer-employee agreement is an employee of his employer that may enter into an agreement under 3402 to provide for the withholding of income tax upon payments of amounts described in paragraph subparens B subparens 1 of 31.3401. Made after December 31st of 1970, an agreement may be entered into and under this section only with respect to the amounts which are included in the gross income of the employee under section 61 and must be applicable to all such amounts paid by the employer to the employee. The amount to be withheld pursuant to an agreement under 3402 shall be determined under the rules contained in 3402 and the regulations thereunder. Okay? So, basically, this is talking about how an employer may hold funds in trust for an employee. Okay. So then we'll get into some of these definitions here. Number one, person. Okay. The term person means one or more individuals, partnerships, associations, labor organizations, corporations, business trusts, legal representatives, or any organized groups of persons, right? So it's not, as of yet, it's not talking about um, a natural person here, right? Um, employer. Employer means a person engaged in an industry affecting commerce who has 20 or more employees for each working day in each of the 20 or more calendar weeks in the current or preceding calendar year, provided that prior to June 30, 1968, employers having had fewer than 50 employers shall not be considered employers. Okay. So employees, the term employee means an individual employed by an employer, except that the term employee shall not include any person elected to public office, right? That's a whole nother deal to get into the public office thing, okay? Um, so then we're going to get into this, the United States, okay? United States means a federal corporation, an agency, department, commission, board, or other entity of the United States, or an instrumentality of the United States, okay? So A says a federal corporation, right? So, so right now we've ascertained that the the United States under subparens A is a federal corporation. We've ascertained under the definition of employer and employee is an employer is anyone that employs more than 20 people in a given day. The United States Corporation, right? The FBI employs more than 20 people a day, right? The IRS employs more than 20 people a day. Like any one of the separate organizations within the United States employs at least 20 people a day. Okay. So they're an employer, right? So for the purposes of this, right, which is right here, 26, anything 26 CFR is taxes, income taxes. So an employee of the United States Corporation is us, right? The taxpayer. So the taxpayer is the employee of the corporation, right? And we already know that the United States is a corporation, federal corporation. We already know it employs more than 20 people, so it's an employer, right? And because we are an employee, that's what gives us. So, and all the other stuff that like we've learned in the mentor group is about creating 1099s, creating bonded promissory notes, creating all this stuff. Why can you do that? Well, I'm showing you the reason why that you can do it is this, right? Is voluntary withholding agreements, which basically is an employer employee agreement, right? So, um, so that's that, right? Now we got here where there's a withholding, right? So on 1099B, you're going to put $1 million withheld or whatever you're going to do, right? So what do they have to do with that, right? So let's go to this. 18 USC 650, right? Depositaries failing to safeguard deposits. If a treasurer of the United States or any public depository fails to keep all monies deposited by any dispersing officer or dispersing agent, as well as monies deposited by any receiver, collector, or other person having money in the United States, he is guilty of embezzlement and shall be fined under this title or sum equal to the amount of money so embezzled. Okay. So who is that? Who is that? Who is that talking about? So if you send in a 1099-B and you put $1 million withheld, who is responsible for that money?
Is it the treasurer?
Yeah, the treasurer, right? You're not responsible for it. They're withholding your funds, right? So they're responsible for it. And if they don't act, right, then they are guilty of this law. So when I do my letters, I put this law in there, right? I say I'll quote this in there, right? And I'll also quote, come on, you jerk. I also quote this one, 18 USC 657, lending, credit, and insurance institutions. Whoever being an officer, agent, or employee, here it is again, of or connected to any capacity to the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, National Credit Union Administration, or any federal home loan bank or federal housing finance agency, Farm Credit Administration, Department of Housing and Urban Development, Federal Crop Insurance and Security of Agriculture acting through the Farmers Home Administration or successor agency, or Rural Development Administration or successor agency, mortgage, insurance, credit savings, blah, 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 right? It gets down to the bottom here and it says any agent who being received such institution or agent, employee of the receiver, right? That's the IRS, embezzles, abstracts, purloins, or willingly misapplies any monies, funds, or credits or securities, it's $1 million fine and 30 years in prison. Okay. So, so now we're talking about employees and employers, right? We're talking about why we can mark things withheld. We're talking about who is responsible to withhold them, right? And who, if they don't pay you the money that you're owed, what can happen to them, right? $1 million fine and 30 years in prison. That's why when you quote this shit on the letter to the IRS, they stop sending frivolous shit. They stop messing with you. They stop doing all that crap, right? Because, and if they do, right, and this is the best part, if they do, then you go to this, which is what I did. Go to this one. Here it is, 6402. The commissioner, within the applicable period of limitations, may credit any overpayment of tax, including interest therein, against any outstanding liability for any tax or any interest additional amount, addition to the tax or assembled penalty owed by the person making the overpayment, and the balance, if any, shall be refunded. So, what is that saying? What does that say? What does that one mean to you?
Means that they owe you something.
Yeah, and it means that if they put a lien on you, they have to use the tax credit, the refund to pay it,
Okay, that makes sense.
right? So if they come at you and you say, "Oh, frivolous filing, $5,000," you send them a letter and say, "Accepted for value, 6402, use the refund to pay it." And then if they say, "Well, you know, we're not, we can't do that," then you go to this and you say, "Okay, the Treasury of the United States or any public depository fails to keep safe all the money's deposited. Okay, where's the money?" This says I'm an employee of the corporation. This says who a person is. This says who the United States is. This says if there's any money owed for any tax purposes at all, it has to be paid. This says that you can't lose the money. And this says if you do lose the money, you're going to have to pay $1 million fine and go to prison for 30 years. And then this, right? Everybody's always talking about this, okay? Two or more persons conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate, right? So let's go to 242 quick, right? Whoever under any color of law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom willfully subjects any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district to deprivation of rights or privileges, blah, 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 depending on what the crime is and how many years and so on and so forth, right? So now we got the employee of the corporation that's agreed to a withholding, and then the amounts are withheld, and then there's a tax due, and then they're not paying the tax. And then because there's two or more people doing it, it's 241 and 242 and 650 and 657. So whenever I do anything with the IRS and I rescission anything, I quote those three laws. Those actually four, because 241 and 242 are separate ones, right? But did I lose everybody?
I'm still here.
Yeah. So because because of that, right? So who is the person that does the withholding? Who's the employee of the corporation? Is it you, the person, or is it the taxpayer?
The taxpayer, is it?
Yeah. Yep. So the taxpayer is the employee of the corporation, and the taxpayer is the one that is saying, do this, don't do this, whatever, right? So who can bring an action? Like who can, like I'm showing you all these laws, right? There's all these laws that everybody quotes and everybody talks about, right? Whatever they are. But the question is, can the taxpayer bring those laws against someone or a corporation or something like that? Can the taxpayer do that?
Hmm.
No, the taxpayer.
Uh,
The taxpayer isn't. real, right? The taxpayer is an entity. We already looked at the taxpayer, the person is an entity. It's not real substance, right? So
right?
it doesn't have rights. So you can't say, my social security number is XYZ and you violated these laws. That's why that doesn't work. That's why you got a million people in this movement running around sending letters and saying that they're 241 and 242 and they just ignore you. Right? That's why they ignore you. That's why they don't do what you want. That's why, you're belligerent, whatever. The whole reason is because you're coming at them as the taxpayer. Everything that I try and teach people,
So,
go ahead.
so the real person can bring this action, correct?
Yeah. But you can't bring it as like when you come at them as the living man, right? What capacity is that? When you come at somebody as the living man, what capacity are you coming at them in?
Mm, mm, oh,
The beneficiary, right? The beneficial interest holder is who you're coming at them as the living man or the living woman. Does
mm,
the beneficiary, can the beneficiary create a court case or can a beneficiary be sued or sue anyone?
mm, uh, mm, as well. Mm,
So no, no.
We'll
That's
say
why,
no.
yeah, the beneficiary can't bring a suit, right? The only thing that can bring a suit, right, is the taxpayer. The living man and woman can't bring a suit. They're the beneficiary, right? So
mm,
who can bring a suit,
mm, 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 mm,
Would it be a
mm,
trustee?
mm,
right? A
mm,
trustee can bring a
mm,
suit, right? So we're not talking about you specifically. We're talking about the capacity. What capacity or what status are you bringing a suit or, coming at them? So which capacity can take these laws and come at someone?
Executor?
Well, yeah, the executor or trustee, right? So, but what capacity, like when we've talked about reading the Constitution, what capacity can we do this stuff in? Remember the authorized representative, right? What are we trying to become when we send a 2848 to the IRS, right? We're trying to be the account user or the authorized representative, right? So what is, Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution, right? It says, or Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution is having spent or having reached the age of 25 and having spent 7 years as a citizen, I do claim my lawful claimant title of U.S. representative, right? So essentially, that's what you can't come at them with this stuff until you have done that, until you have completed your process of becoming the U.S. representative, right? Or an electorate law. So then when you do that, you got to go to the United States attorney, right? Because these are US codes, right? These are US codes for this one, 242, right? US code. So who can bring an action with a US code?
The authorized representative.
Yep, a US representative or which is what a state attorney or a United States attorney is a US representative. They're representing us, right? So that's what you do is you come at them, you come at the DOJ, Department of Justice, as the U.S. representative. I am a representative of the United States people, and I need you to do something about this. So that's what I do. I don't like send hate mail to people in these different organizations and be like, "Oh, you violated this and you're the evil and you're the worst and whatever," because you're never going to get anything done that way, right? So what I do is I contact the DOJ. I send letters to the DOJ and I say, "This is these are the laws they're violating." Right? This is the things that they're doing, right? I need you to bring in action. So, or you can file a case. You can file a court or a case in the U.S. tax court, or you can file a case in the U.S. Court of Claims, or you can file an Article 3 court, right? Any federal court in any jurisdiction in the country is an Article 3 court. Now, I'm not talking about state courts or municipal courts or town courts or any of those shady motherfuckers, right? I'm talking about the federal courthouse, right? We got three of them in Georgia, right? There's a dozen up in New York. It just depends on your state. This is what's interesting is that like like your electors, right? Electoral votes. Do you know how many if your state has 7 electoral votes, how many federal courthouses does it have?
Should it be 7?
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I always wondered about Tory votes. It seemed like they turned
The,
it.
the Electoral College, right? So what I'm teaching you is to become an elector at law,
Okay.
right? That's what you're going to become. You're going to become the age of majority. You're going to use trust to separate yourself from all that other stuff, and you're going to become an elector at law, not a voter. A voter is who votes so that the elector, and they still vote how they want. An elector, those states, they'll be like a whole red state, and all of a sudden they're voting blue, right? They don't, it, it's like, it's just a game, right? It's like, oh yeah, come out and vote. 30,000 people voted for whoever. And then it's like, oh, this guy's the president or this guy's the governor or whatever, right? Because elector, you got to understand the laws of what an elector is. Right? So first of all, you have to be at least 25 years old. Next thing is you got to have 7 years as a citizen. You got to have your lawful claimant title. You have to own property, right? You can't be an elector in the United States if you don't own property. It's right in the Constitution what you have to do to be an elector. So it's like all these people running around talking about voting, it's irrelevant because if you're not an elector at law, you're not an elector. You don't get to elect anything. Now think about the IRS paperwork, right? What paperwork with the IRS talk about elector or election, right? So if you're electing to do something in the IRS, why is it an election? Why do they need you to elect to do something? Why do they use that terminology, elector or election?
Because they want to seem voluntary and make it seem like you're making a decision to do this.
Well, it's because of your status, right? Who are you? Now, when you were born, you were giving a birth certificate, which is one stock in the corporation, right? It's a stock certificate. So, because you have a stock certificate in the corporation, what does that make you in the corporation?
You can. That means you have a vote. That means
You
you
have voting rights, correct?
vote right. Yeah.
Right. So if you have voting rights because you got a stock certificate, not election rights, right? Not U.S. representative rights, but voter rights, right? Because it's voting stock. That's why they need you to elect something because you're an employee of the corporation, which goes right back to everything I've been telling you. Now, when you get deep, once we get deeper into this last trust, then you're going to see that. You're going to see this paperwork that says revocation of election and all these things because you're trying to move out of that situation where you are the employee voter stockholder, right? You don't want to be a stockholder. You don't want to be a voting stockholder, right? Common stock and preferred stock. Do you know the difference between common stock and preferred stock?
No, I don't know the difference in preferred. Does it mean one is like private almost?
Well, one's voting rights,
Okay.
right?
Right. That makes
And the other one is, um,
is it non-voting on
well, it's not necessarily non-voting, but it's a different set of parameters in the corporation, right? One is voting and one's ownership, right? One of them you sit on the board of directors and the other one is your beneficiary. So, like, you want preferred stock, you don't want common stock. That's what the birth certificate is. So then when we surrender the birth certificate, we're giving back the common stock and getting our preferred stock, which is ourselves, right? I'm not just a certificate holder to the body, I am the body, right? So that's where it gets. But then when you get into all this other stuff, what I've been going over tonight, like all of it starts to make sense because it's because you got the birth certificate, you're a stockholder, you're an employee of the corporation, and because you're an employer, right? That relationship is there. So that's what gives you the right to do these things. But if they're not doing their part, then you got to come at them differently, right? So you got to file a case or you got to come at the DOJ or something like that, right? You can't just like blast all this shit on the internet and be like, oh, color of law, I've been violated, or, mortgages are illegal. Okay, well, what are you going to do about it? Right? Like what are you going to do to fix the fact that you have an illegal mortgage? What are you going to do about the fact that you're paying 2 or 3 times for your credit card? Are you going to get the money back? Right? Or you're just going to leave that money on the table. There's an entire group that I had to join it just because I'm an asshole. It's something about taxes strike. It's the strike from taxes or something. And they're all in there, all these like anti-taxers, right? And all these people are saying, oh, you don't have to pay tax. Nobody has to pay tax, and all this shit. Right. And I'm like, I'm just sitting there like, you guys are leaving millions of dollars on the table. Like, why? Why are you doing that? Right? So this is the thing is that, are you a man of action? Are you a person of action or not? Are you just going to wait for everybody to show up with a wheelbarrow full of gold for you? Or are you going to go get your chips? Right? Are you going to go put things in place so that you are moving in the right direction? So that you're not paying 2 or 3 times a year for your credit card. So you don't have an illegal mortgage. So you don't, whatever. Like whatever the scenario is for your own personal life. Like how are you going to take control of that? Right? So that's what this is about. It's about showing you this so that you can see how this works and why you have to do these things. Right? What the mechanism is and the moving parts of it, right? So that you can handle it right. Right? So when you get a frivolous letter or you get a frivolous fine, you know how to deal with it. Right? And then they just keep sending. They just keep sending shit. Like today they called. IRS called me today. How often do they call anybody, right? They called me today and they're like, we're the tax advocate service. We're not involved with the IRS, right? And then she's like, per this document that was filled out, um, I need to, I need to make sure that you're the taxpayer. And I was like, well, I'm not the taxpayer. And she's like, well, I can't help you. And I was like, okay, take care. So the whole thing was a setup to get me on the phone to admit I'm the taxpayer, right? So we all know this. I mean, how many times have you heard the IRS say, we don't call you on the phone? How desperate do you think they're getting when they made a phone call today? Right?
Real.
Yeah. So they need, like, now they're okay. At first, they were sending letters of frivolous filings, and then I got rid of all that. And then they sent a frivolous fine, and I got rid of that. And then I filed a U.S. tax court case, and then they were like, "Oh, wrong jurisdiction." So I dismissed that, and then I filed one in the U.S. tax court. And so now I'm doing that, and I'm talking to the DOJ, and now they're just obsessively sending me letters. They're sending me letters. Oh, you need to go in this office. First of all, it was you need to call us on the phone and verify your identity. Then it was you need to go into an office and verify your identity. Now they're calling me to verify identity, right? And all the shit that they're doing, I have somebody that I know in the IRS office out west. So when they were giving me all kinds of shit in Georgia about setting up an appointment, I just called that guy and I was like, "Look, I need to come in and do this." He's like, "Yeah, no problem." So I came in, I showed his passport, everything, and then, all of a sudden things started moving in the right direction. So this is like what they'll do. This is what they're going to continue to do is to communicate in a way where they're going to keep asking you. And it's even going to get, I can promise you right now that they're going to come at me with with a big check. It's usually a couple million from what I've heard from people. And they're going to come at me and they're going to say, look, all you got to do is admit you're the taxpayer, and we're going to hand you this $2 million check. And it's like the question is, are you going to sell your soul? Right? Because that's what they want you to do. I don't have to sell my soul. I don't have to take an offer. I don't have to play those games because those credits are mine, right? The credits are mine. I don't need an offer. I don't have to tell you I'm the taxpayer. I don't have to do anything, right? Like, why do I have to tell you that? Why do I have to do any of that? Why do I have to jump through your flaming hoops? Because they need you to be the taxpayer. They need you to be that because, as we know, it's roughly 47 billion. 47 billion in a lifetime is the amount of money that will generate, give or take however many billion, right? So like that's what they do. And they're going to keep doing it, right? And they just wait for you. And as soon as you cave, then you end up 6 years in some facility somewhere, right? You can't do that. You can't, you gotta keep going with it, right? So that's what they did today. Today they did that. They called me the tax advocate service called me today and wanted me on the phone to admit I was the taxpayer. I don't get, I don't get, I don't get calls from friends anymore. I get calls from the IRS. I get calls from the DOJ. I'm on a first name basis with this agent from the DOJ up in Washington, D.C. She calls me up and she's like, "Oh, Kent, this is so and so." She just uses her first name. I'm like, "Oh, we're on first name basis now." It's just like those are the people that call me on the phone, and it's it's fun, when you get there and you're like really like, starting to understand this and you can talk smart on the phone, it's actually fun to get these phone calls and to like understand, what they're doing. And or these letters, right? I got a pile of them. I just got another one. This one today or yesterday. Um, I don't know. They're talking about stuff from like 5 years ago. Like, like I have five tax refunds submitted to the IRS that total somewhere from 3 to 4 million. And they're sending me letters about shit that happened 5 years ago. They're calling me on the phone. They're sending me letters to go to the tax office and verify my identity. Like they're trying to do everything. And then they sent me a letter last week. I did this one. I posted this one and showed all you guys it. You know, the 96 where it says, "Oh, we just we just verified your account and everything looks great." You know, it's like one minute they're like, "Oh, you're a frivolous filer," and then the next minute they're like, "Here's a fine," and then, "Oh, the DOJ from or the DOJ is calling to get an extension on the court case," and then you get a letter that says, "Oh, we went through your account and everything looks great." Like they're like they'll do anything right now to get me to put myself back in there because I'm out. Because I'm out.
Is there ever a point they'll stop? Do you think, Kent? This is Caroline, by the way. Hello,
I know.
everyone.
I can see your face. Was that a horseshoe on your hat?
Yes. It's when
So,
I lived in Texas.
yeah, Texas is a good place to be. I like Georgia because it's like, I don't know, it's the southern Wyoming, you know. The food is the same.
What do you mean? That sounds like a good thing.
Yeah, it's like pro-gun and, but
Oh,
it's like right in the
okay.
middle of all that. Right in the
Ah, I
middle
didn't know
of
that.
North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee. It's like in the middle of all that, but it's just like mountains and pro guns and cowboy boots and trucks and it's just well, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
not like that in Atlanta, but I live out in the country.
yeah.
So yeah, and
I
but
like that.
the truth is it's like it doesn't matter if they stop or not. It doesn't matter what they do because I'm out. I've already proved that the one letter that I got where they said everything is fine and everything's moving along just fine. I know what happened. Remember I surrendered my birth certificate. Do you guys remember that letter, all that stuff I did about 2 weeks ago? I surrendered the driver's license and then I surrendered the birth certificate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Well, the week later, I got a letter from the IRS that says your account looks great. So there's like I don't believe in coincidences, like all of a sudden I tell them I don't, I'm surrendering the birth certificate and I'm going to collapse the trust. And they're like, "Oh wait, we're just kidding. No frivolous filings. Your account looks great." Oh my God, this is too much. So anyway, like that's the thing here is I'm just kind of like, I recorded this for y'all that came in later. I know there it might have been my internet that was like kicking people out or whatever, but I recorded this one because I'm gonna put it on YouTube. But what I basically did is I went through a bunch of laws that show, how the United States is a corporation, how we're an employee, and the different things that you can, the different things that you can do. But then I talked a lot about capacity and status, and that is you can't just be the living man and woman and come at the United States with all these laws, right? You can't do that, right? You have to get to a certain level in this movement in order to do that, in order to be taken seriously, right? And the thing is right now, when I go and I open a court case, I get continuous emails from the court asking me to hire a public defender, right? Why am I getting daily emails from a court telling me to get a lawyer?
They want a contract with you for
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, because they don't want me coming in their court and spouting off at all my equity shit,
Mm.
right? When they come at you and they say, "Oh, well, we're going to have to dismiss that because of this," then I turn around and say, "Okay, well, if there's no remedy at law, I demand we move this to a court of equity." And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting in chambers. They don't want that. They need a lawyer. There's two cases of mine right now where they're pushing really hard for lawyers, but
Does that happen regularly, Kent, where you just invoke that and they don't pretend they didn't hear you
Well, they're gonna
or
like mute you if you're on like if you're on like remote, they're gonna mute you, right? Or if you try and express the trust like it's a criminal case, right? And you go into the court and
Mhm.
you say, or you go virtually and you say, I'm not here to argue the law, I'm here to settle the account. And they're like, mute, right? Like I've had a lot of my friends, one of my friends was he was going after a court, it was child support or something like that. And so he went in there and expressed the trust and they muted him. And you see he was holding signs up. He was like writing them with Sharpies and holding signs up. Oh, it's too much. But yeah, I mean, it's just like you got to do what you got to do. You got to do your best. And there are times when if I get backed into a corner, I'll lawyer up, right? I'll sign a contract. I'll do different things. Like there is nothing that I won't do. What is that quote? It says, "It is in my power to take everything and turn it to my advantage." Right. And that's the thing is that you got to be smart and you got to be able to think on your feet and you have to be able to say, okay, I'm going to spin this to my advantage. I'm going to move this in this direction. Right. And you got to know when, you got to know, when the feeling is right. And, it's like today. Today, I just didn't feel right. I didn't leave. Right. I didn't leave the house because I don't know. I didn't feel like it. It didn't, it wasn't like I was sick or anything. I was just like, I don't know. I just don't want to go anywhere. I trust my instincts now, right? And so that's a big part of it. But mainly, what we're going over tonight, what's so important is just understanding that, you're not the taxpayer, you're the authorized representative, and the taxpayer is an employee of the corporation. That's why the taxpayer can do withholdings. And when they come at you in these different ways, then you have the ability to come back at them. But you got to go the right way, right? You got to go through the DOJ or you got to go to, your district attorney or whoever, right? And sometimes you got to jump through some flaming hoops to get stuff done, but that's essentially like what it is. And I just, I did this meeting because I sit there on Facebook and I watch people all day and I watch them they just spit the stuff out. And, it looks really good, right? Some of the stuff, like
Yeah, it does.
it looks
Yeah.
really good when people are like, oh yeah, right to this and right to that and blah, blah, blah. But if you don't do it right, so that's why I rewrote the books, right? I did that trust book and I sent it, to the mentor group people. And then I just did another one today for the SPC. So discard the old SPC books because that's going to be the new one. And it's just like I'm doing this and I'm running through it because the information changes, right? It changes. And as it changes, I change how I put the information out there so that, and it's not like, especially with the SBC, if you like put crap on the record, right? It's not the end of the world, right? And if you put
Mhm.
some stuff on the record you don't want on the record, just redact it. All you got to do is contact the wherever you put it on the record at, and you got to tell them, "Oh, I inadvertently put this information on the record, and I want it redacted." And they'll allow you to redact documents so that when people see them on the record, they don't get all your personal information or whatever you're doing. And then once you do that, just move on, right? Like the biggest thing is to like not cry over spilt milk. Like if you did something and it doesn't really, it's not really working for you, just forget it. Go on to something else. Because there's, the rules of equity say that there is no wrong without a remedy. If there's no wrong without a remedy, it doesn't matter what you do. If you do something wrong, it doesn't matter. Just do something else. Fix it, redact it, and go on to something else. If you create a trust and then 5 years later, you're like, God, I wish I'd have done this other trust. Good. Dissolve the trust and create a different one. Right? There is nothing in this that you can't do. You know, and so you can't screw it up. You can't be wrong, right? All you do is you move through it and you adjust it as it fits to your personal needs, right?
Yeah.
So that's basically it. That's what I was trying to get after right now is just kind of correct some people's opinions on some of these laws and definitions and like, it's just you got to get your status right so that you can come at these different organizations and they'll take you seriously, right? So
Mm.
anyway, check those books out. I sent to y'all, all y'all on here, and um, you know, let me know if you have any more questions about stuff.
Can I ask you, is it open time now
Yeah,
or
go
you
ahead.
done? Yeah. So, the rescission
Yeah.
that we sent in for my ticket and my court,
Hmm.
they I'm sending in the rescission because technically, since I didn't sign anything, I have not been contracted, right? Or am I
No,
being
that can't help.
contracted?
You're already contracted.
I am?
Yeah,
Just because why?
you rolled the window down and talked to him, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay, it's contract.
So it's a verbal contract just because I talked with them.
Yep.
So I need to rescission it. I need to let them know I'm rescissioning the contract and hopefully they'll stop it. They'll end the action, the
Well, that's
court
the
and
point. That's why you
yeah,
take the paperwork they gave you and rescission it because what has a
mhm,
higher title, implied or expressed?
expressed.
Right. So if you express it in writing, and that's why I told you to send it certified mail
I did. Yeah.
so that you can guarantee that they got it. They can't just shred it and be like, "Oh, we never got it."
Okay.
And then you go from there. And then if they're criminal, which they might be, then they're going to turn around and they're going to come up with all kinds of excuses. The way they do it in New York is they say, um, "Well, you got to make a plea." What do you mean? Well, if you don't make a plea, we're going to pull your license. And I'm like, you can't pull a license without due process. Well, in the state of New York, if you don't plea to the case, then yeah, we pull your license. And I'm like, good. I surrendered it.
Hmm.
I sent it back to Albany, New York. I was like, uh, I was like, I'm surrendering this license, so take care.
Yeah.
And that's
So,
the
sorry, Ken, what do you do when you want to rent a car if you ever need a license?
I have a license. I just sent
You
that
do?
one back. Yeah, I'll
Oh,
have
okay.
mine in Georgia shortly.
Okay. I
And then
gotcha.
and then as soon as I get the license, then I send paperwork to the state and I say I am rescissioning any contractual obligation. I am only keeping this for identification purposes only. And you send this paperwork into them, and then you use the license the way it's supposed to be used, which is for identification, right? And
Okay.
and that's how you do it. You have to correct the status. And then when you sign, you don't sign just your name. I sign agent,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
I'm not this person. I'm an agent of this person, right? Authorized representative.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So that's how you do it, but you gotta like when you get later into my stuff here, you're gonna hear videos and audios from a guy named Rourke. And Rourke talks all about this, right?
Yeah.
It's Rourke's thing is how to fly under the radar. Like
Yeah.
it's not. Here's the thing: is if you're just like blasting trust law in everybody's face, you're dishonoring the trust because the trust is supposed to be private,
Right.
right? So when
Yeah.
you're blasting trust law in everybody's face, then you're dishonoring the trust. So the thing is that we teach you is how to fly under the radar, right? Get a
Mm-hmm.
driver's license, but then rescission everything. And when you get tickets, rescission them. And if they go forward, then there's other things that you do if they start their criminal bullshit, like, well, we're gonna take your license away. Well, like I don't live in Arizona. Take
Right.
it. Like
Yeah.
take my driving privileges in Arizona, like whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the thing is that you just gotta like the other day I was in the DMV like talking and whatever, and they were like, we need 3-year MVR from New York, or we're not gonna give you a license. I'm like, good, give me an ID card. And they're like, well, you can't drive on that. I'm like, I can drive on whatever the fuck I want. And she's like, kind of looking at me, and I'm like, it's a public road, right? I can travel on a public road and I'm not dishonorable, right? I'm not dishonoring anything here. So, like, I'll just take an ID card. That's fine.
And she gave it to you?
Well, I didn't go get it yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
But
have you seen a rescission work just right off the bat?
yeah,
Have you
I've
seen
had half a dozen of them that work right off the bat, and I've had them not work. I've
what
had them,
states? Yeah.
well, in New York, they did both.
Okay. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, even in the
Well,
same
I pissed
state.
off
Mm.
I reported the town court judge for not recusing himself in a case. So
Uh,
he's in the town court of like many counties there. So that's
mm.
when they actually were going to let this one go and then they didn't.
So they
So
retaliated.
yeah, they retaliated and I was like, whatever, do whatever you want. I don't care.
Hmm.
But that's the other thing is it's like not getting like emotional about it, right? I'm not trying to like attack anybody. I'm not saying certain people are emotional. I'm just saying that to not get emotional when you're dealing with the court, it's not personal, right? It's
Right.
business. It's all about money, right? So
Yep.
just go through your lines and if if they honor it, cool. If they don't honor it, then go on to the next thing, right? Because
What is the next thing if they don't honor a
well, you got to
rescission?
respond. Like if they send a letter and they say, "Oh,
Yeah.
you're demanded to appear," blah blah blah, then and if it says something like, "We accept your not guilty plea," or something like that's what they do in New York.
Yeah.
Here in Georgia, I just got the pink tickets and I wrote rescission with marker across them, and I mailed them with a letter, and I never heard another thing. Here in Georgia, it's like as soon as you rescission a ticket, if it's within 3 days, it's done.
Yeah. And if they do want me to, to continue with me, wouldn't we fight jurisdiction? Because how do they have jurisdiction over
You
me? My
you don't
license is from
fight.
Texas. I live in Florida. Yeah.
You don't
It's
fight
like,
jurisdiction, right? Like again, like you gave him
okay.
jurisdiction, you pulled over and rolled the window down. So
Oh,
you can't like say, "Oh, you didn't have jurisdiction." They're going to say, "Then why'd you pull over?" But if you don't pull over, then they're going to ram you
right.
and mace you and all this stuff, right? So
Right.
like the
Right.
only choice is to pull over. It's not like you cannot pull over, but the basically what um that's what creates the jurisdiction, right?
Yeah,
So
but I didn't
um,
contract with them. It was a unilateral contract that they gave me. I didn't sign it. So I still don't see how they have jurisdiction over me just because I responded by talking to them. I mean, I
uh,
understand. Yeah, it was a verbal contract. It became a verbal contract, but really, how do they have jurisdiction over me? And how can they say we've got a contract? I mean,
well, there's
once
many
I
of
rescind
them.
it.
First of all, you have a driver's license, right? And the
Yeah.
driver's license, I don't care what state it's from, that creates a jurisdiction if you haven't handled it right. You're driving a
Okay.
car with a license plate on it. License plate is jurisdiction, right? You
Okay.
pulled over and rolled the
Yeah.
window down, that's jurisdiction, right? And so,
Okay.
like, it's just like they have this thing set up so that there's like 20 ways that they pull you
Yeah.
into this. And it's not necessarily like they need your permission, right? They don't need
Hmm.
your permission, right? It's just like,
Hmm.
they say stuff like, well, you chose to drive on the road, so that's, we have jurisdiction over you. It's if you
Yeah.
want to really read up on it, you got to look at subject matter, venue, there's all kinds of like different points of jurisdiction. And then when you get in the court, there's a bunch of other stuff. Like you don't sign a bunch of shit in court. At the end, you do. But when you walk into a courtroom, you haven't signed a bunch of shit. So how do they get jurisdiction in court? By you say, well, you've been charged with speeding and it carries a fine of $187. Do you understand that? And then you're like, yeah, I understand that, Your Honor. Boom, jurisdiction, right? Or um, can you state your name for the record? Yeah, my name is Caroline, jurisdiction,
Yeah.
right? And it's all assumption. It's not like actual anything. It's all assumption, right? Or how do you plea? Oh, I plea not guilty, jurisdiction. Because if
Still
they don't have
tacit.
jurisdiction, why are you pleading?
It's still tacit though. They're just, like how I
Well,
don't know. I mean, I do.
well,
I understand, but I mean, I comprehend.
no,
But
and
it's
I'm just,
still,
yeah, I mean, I'm on your team here. I'm just telling you that that's
yeah,
how they do it. So I'm not into like dishonesty here. Like I don't be dishonest, and I'm not trying to teach you to be dishonest. I'm trying to tell
yeah,
you how it
yeah,
is, right? And so
right.
that, so that you can make the right decision and you can say the right thing when you're in front of a judge or a lawyer or whatever. Or when the IRS calls and says, "Are you the taxpayer? Here's a check for 2 million. Are you the taxpayer?" No.
Okay, thank you.
And that's it. It's not and if you do end up in court over it, then you just got to talk right. You just got to say, it's not my name. I'm not here to argue the name. I'm not here to argue jurisdiction or any of that crap. I'm just here to settle the account.
Yeah.
Well, the account needs to be settled. So, and
Mhm.
then, and then they do whatever, and if they try and get you to plea, you say, well, that's great. But before we move forward, I need you to recognize that I am not the name and I'm here to settle the account. And you just keep saying that. You just keep saying that until they recognize it, right? And as soon as they recognize that you're just there to settle the account and you're not there to create controversy, then it gets dismissed.
Well, it gets dismissed because they get their credits out of the case, the bond that they filed and all of that good stuff, right?
Right. Right. And so then what you do as a trustee, what you do is you give them their credits and then um, you claim the bonds. And then you do a
So I'm going to be able,
1099-B.
if they go forward with this, I'm going to have a bond to claim. And that
Right.
I hope this happens because I want to learn all of this.
Yeah, speeding tickets are easy shit to learn on too, because it's like, who cares? Like, you're not
Right.
gonna lose your license, and if you just, worst case scenario, you got to pay a fine, right?
Uh-huh.
But like, if you do it right and you got to stand your ground, and you got to say it 3 times, right?
Yep. Yep.
And they say, "Oh, how do you plead?" Well, before we do that, I need the court to recognize that I'm not here to do anything other than settle the account,
Hmm.
right? And so you just keep doing that. Now, when you get into family court, that's different. Don't do this crap in family court because it's not just adversarial. It's not you against them because you got the kid and then you got
Right.
the guardian ad litem and then you got the parent and then you got the other parent and then you got the judge, right? And then you got CPS because they're always going to stick their freaking face in it, right?
Yep.
So you can't do that because somebody will just say, "Oh, they're crazy, take their kid away." Right. So like it's this family court thing is a whole different animal. So you got to do it, you got to handle it totally different. Right. But
Hmm. Hmm.
and sometimes you go into a court case and you want their jurisdiction. Right. So if you're like suing somebody because they stole from you or trying to steal from you, right? Or like I do these mandamus. You know what a writ of mandamus is? So if a clerk
Studied it, but I forgot. What is
a,
it?
a clerk or a judge doesn't do their ministerial duty that they owe you, then you then
Okay.
you file a writ of mandamus, which that makes a higher court come to them and say, nope, you are obligated to do this. Right. So
So
that's
when a judge isn't doing his job, you file a writ of mandamus, and
yeah.
they have to do it then.
Well, that judge of that case will make them do it.
Mm.
So you go to a higher court. So it depends on the state. Like New York, it's an Article 78 proceeding.
Hmm.
In Wisconsin, it's just called a writ of mandamus. So if you're in a state court, then you got to go to a higher court, but you just file a civil case against that jurisdiction. It's called a writ
Hey,
of
wait, so
mandamus.
it moves it to a higher court, or the
You
judge
have to
is kind of,
file. No, it doesn't do anything with the case you're in. You file a new case in a higher court, and it's called a writ of
okay.
mandamus. And then they
Okay.
look at the information. You got to serve all the parties. They look at the information, then the judge will issue an order for that lower court to do their job, whether they're not filing paperwork or whatever. But sometimes, like, it just isn't worth it because sometimes a writ of mandamus is like $300 to open a case. So, like, are you going to go spend $300 on a mandamus when you got a $80 ticket or a $50 ticket?
Right.
No,
Yeah.
pay.
Yeah.
You just pay the $50 and be done with it. So,
Okay.
yeah, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. As you get further in this and you get more of your trust stuff done and you start acting in reliance and estoppel, then this stuff
Uh-huh.
is just going to be automatic. It's not going to be a fight anymore.
Okay.
They know you're
Makes
not
sense.
out yet. They're, you're like in the middle here. So
Yeah.
just
Okay. So exciting, all of this. I'm so excited. Thank you
I'm glad.
for knowing what you know.
Well, the knowledge is God's, and I just obey. That's why I keep getting the knowledge from God, is because I keep
Hmm.
obeying, So,
Yep. Yep.
so anyway,
Ken,
thank you. What's up, William?
before you go, what is the difference between authorized representative and the agent?
It's just words. It's the same thing. Authorized representative is the authorized agent. It's the same. It's just a different set of words, but it means
Thank
the same.
you.
Yep, that's it. All right. Well, thanks for coming. You know, I'm glad you guys learned something tonight, and we'll talk soon. We got another meeting on Sunday for you all, so I look forward to seeing you all.
Okay.
I can
Thank you.
take
Thank you,
care.
Kat.
Yep, bye.
See you Sunday.